Hey, welcome back to Fake Deep Thinking. Just a group of friends sitting down talking about news, culture, and yes, even politics. We got John, Doc,
Yo.
Ian in the figurative back,
Hey, yo.
and myself, Eugene. So sorry I missed y'all last week. John was going through a storm and his power went out and it was out for a hot minute. We were
It
thinking
was a
about
weather storm, but it was a storm in my life too.
but so we pretty much put the politics on hold for that week because today we got a little bit of political discussion. One serious and then one joking to lighten up the mood because we all know how politics can get sometimes. So let's dive first into the, I guess you could say, the serious political discussion, which is if y'all have not heard, affirmative action has been reversed. So let me put on my glasses real quick to read this. So Supreme Court ruling against affirmative action. We have the actual Supreme Court verdict right here. I don't want to read the full thing, obviously, because it's like 237 pages. But just if y'all ever want to look it up, go to Politico. They have access to the full ruling if you want to read through it. I'm just going to read a quick summary of this, and then we got a article from American University. So the Supreme Court on Thursday ruled against affirmative action in higher education, striking down race concessions admissions programs at Harvard and the University of North Carolina. The justices ruled the universities discriminated against white and Asian American applicants by using race-conscious admissions policies that benefited applicants from underrepresented backgrounds. And then obviously here's the full ruling right here if y'all want to read to it. Now let's jump over to the American University. The upcoming Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action, why it matters. Last October, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments in two separate cases about the consideration of race in college admissions. Students for Fair Admissions SFFA versus University of North Carolina and Students of Fair Admissions versus Harvard University. The court's final decision is expected by June as the court wraps up its work for the 2022 session. Obviously, this is a little bit older, but it kind of a little summary here. As we know now, they ruled in favor. Many experts expect the court's conservative majority to rule against affirmative action. If so, colleges and universities will no longer be able to consider race as part of their admission decisions, mainly for the first time since the civil rights era. The decision, blah blah blah. The decision would have sweeping effects on admissions and the composition of students on college campuses across the nation. When the University of California schools were forced to stop using affirmative action admissions more than 15 years ago, Black and Latino enrollment fell by half in the first year at the U.S. Berkeley and Los Angeles campuses. According to Insider Higher Education, since then, the University of California system has spent more than $500 million on using race neutral measures to increase student diversity, but all have fallen short. So, what would happen in the future without affirmative action? Literature professor Sarah Clark Kaplan, executive director of AU's Anti Racist Research and Policy Center, is one of the nation's leading voices on race and racial justice. Here she helps us understand the role of race and. Uh, so let's get right into our opinions, pretty much.
I'm
Since
about
you
to say
guys,
you about to start losing me.
yeah. So, first reactions. Do you guys think this is a good or bad thing that affirmative action has been rescinded or ruled against?
All I think is, well, I see. I've always leaned a little bit further away from affirmative action. Um, I believe in. I don't know. I believe in like I guess there being policies that are against any type of discrimination, but then I feel like sometimes it's like when you tell the kid that's getting bullied on to just go tell the teacher, you think you're helping, but like the teacher may even think they're helping, but like it doesn't do nothing but make it worse. So I feel like it just kind of flips the question onto whoever's doing the admittance or looking at the applications like, okay, is there another reason why I'm not hiring this individual? If there is that reason, you know what I'm saying? So like right now it goes to, oh, I need to hire a minimum of this because of a portion of minorities because of affirmative action. Now, if there are changes, it goes to the same people who were meeting their quotas, so to speak, to ask themselves if there is a dip that's like tremendous. Is it that they're not as qualified, or is there another reason why all of a sudden the number dips? But I, I'm indifferent. I just think it just flips the question.
Doc, how do you feel? You think this is a good thing, a bad thing, or are you kind of neutral on it?
I'm actually kind of perplexed by it because I remember we talked about that one guy who was like the Indian guy who couldn't get in because they had gotten already like too many Indians.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely situations like that where like certain cultures prioritize certain types of professions and they just kind of like, send all their kids there. See one demographic take over like particular schools. And I I guess this would definitely open up the doors for more of them to get in if they're already like prioritizing it. I am really curious though because I think the idea for affirmative action was to stop like really rich kids who are able to get really advanced educations from being the only ones to get into school, whereas like the other kids that didn't have the money put in to get in there, they needed that
I don't
one.
think that was a specific reason. It might have been a caveat. I'm not going to say it wasn't a reason, but I don't think it was the main reason. Because the affirmative action was, if I'm reading this correctly, it was first put in 1964, which was during the height of the civil rights movement.
Mhm.
So, like, it was pretty much because of literal racism and discrimination. So, when it finish your point, then I'll go. I'm sorry.
No, I actually didn't know that, so that makes more sense because I mean you're coming out of like the civil rights movement where everybody is just like post what's the word for
Segregation.
segregation, yeah, and so like schools were not just by way of life and manners that they had at the time, willing to bring in minorities, and so the government literally had to go in and be like, do it, stop fucking around. But now I guess it is a little bit different. The money's more spread out, and people in general are just more inclusive, and there's more empathy, and there's not as much racial division as there was then because it wasn't supported by law. Like now people have grown accustomed to growing up in like diverse areas. I do remember hearing things like I remember at one of my jobs I heard something called diversity quota, and I was like, ugh, like dude, that shit gave me fucking heebie-jeebies, man, when you hear that stuff. Because they would ask us like, do you think we're hitting our diversity quota? And I was just like, well, what are you gonna do? You're gonna hire a couple Indians and two Mexicans if I tell you you're not? Like that just sounds kind of weird. Like, you know what I mean? Because it does imply that they'll just grab whatever they need to meet their quota and just throw them in there. Which
Recipe
we
for
don't.
disaster, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because I mean, we want society to be a meritocracy where we're all given what we earn and because we're good at it. But at the same time, you don't want to
We
leave
want
people
everybody
behind.
beneath us to be a meritocracy.
I
Nobody above them wants anybody above it to be a meritocracy. Like nobody, no, no,
I think not
no.
as a group. Like nobody wants a group above them. An individual would
Mm-mm.
be like, all right, that guy was good. Like he beat
Like,
me.
yeah, that's
I don't know
cool.
if I agree with
But
that
a
either. Honestly,
group,
I'm kind of with John on the cynical aspect of it all. I think there's a certain. I've heard an argument, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, which is, and John, you addressed this early on, Doc, which was there are a certain class of children, I guess you could say, kids who get accepted into certain universities, probably not based off merit, probably just because it's what's the term, um legacy, because they're a legacy. Like that's how fraternities call it. If you're going into a fraternity and your brother, your dad, your father, your grandfather, whatever, was a part of that fraternity, you automatically get accepted into that fraternity because you're a legacy. And stuff like that happens with school. So that's a different argument, but I do think that's also a problem that needs to be addressed. I'm just not sold or convinced on affirmative action being a proper avenue to solve for that. Um,
it's too affirmative action is too general. I think you know what I think our laws actually lack, and this is just John who works a regular job opinion. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing crazy, but I think they lack um specificity to they do, but they don't. They lack specificity to specific situations. I believe we should let certain situations play out and then cultivate laws to prevent certain situations. But as those situations grow, or as soon as we cultivate a law, we have to realize there are going to be implications that we don't see. So the law should always be adjusted. Where we get stuck at is uh, politicians who don't want laws to be adjusted, or somewhere along the line, somebody loses the motivation to keep adding nuance to certain things. And I feel like certain laws, they pre they almost become outdated. There you go. They become outdated when the lawmakers stop adding nuance to them as time goes on. I feel like this is one
That
of those laws where
that's literally my opinion on this. Because during the first obviously birth of affirmative action, it makes sense. We just got segregation. You know, there was high discrimination and like racism, all that kind of stuff. It makes sense. But now we're in 2023, where I don't know if this is the right opinion to have, because I might be, in my opinion, very blessed and privileged, where I grew up being exposed to so many different ethnicities, cultures, skin tones, if you want to take it that far. Like I think if you have not seen a black person, an Indian, an Asian person in America, like you are in one crazy bubble. And I just don't think it's needed anymore. So
I think sometimes the diversity that we're talking about is not as plain and simple as that. I'll put it like this: where me and you, Gene, went to school was each each group itself had depth, and I feel like sometimes you may interact with an Indian guy, an Asian guy, a black guy, a Mexican guy, or whatever it is, and you're only you're only interacting with a specific, I guess, type of that race or that gender or that whatever it is. You
maybe
get
I
what
mean
I'm
that's
saying?
fair,
So
but
like I don't
maybe
think it's as simple as like no, but just because the area we grew in, it was like, for example, I'm African. So there would be like a smelly African or like a smart African, or not to say you couldn't be both, but you know what I'm saying? Any of the stereotypes that you have. So if you're constantly just bumping into that same African dude and it's the stinky guy, right? You would say, well, no, I'm pretty diverse. I bump into all these different people from these different races, but I don't think we actually. A lot of people don't have aren't blessed enough to actually um, be in depth or go in depth with other people's cultures enough to actually gain a real understanding of other people's cultures.
that's a different argument. Because now I'd argue like I think culture is a different argument, because at some degree I believe in assimilation, and I know it's probably a
Hmm.
hot topic. That's probably a hot stance to take. I just don't think America has assimilated. I think we need an assimilation process, but that's just a different topic in itself.
Are you talking about the melting pot thing we talked about one time?
Yeah,
I do agree with
Gotcha.
assimilation to an extent. Like I I know like Gene said is a hot topic, but I do believe in some level of nationalism, you know. But as
Correct.
soon as you hear that word, a lot of people are like, "Whoa, fucking Hitler," and you're just like, "Whoa, dude, I just, I'm a little bit proud of my nation. Was born here. Can I not have some patriotism?" But like I do think when people hear like assimilation, they think of like whatever is the top group, and then they think of all of us merging into that. And I think we're at a point where there's just too many races that I don't think it's that easy anymore. I think assimilation needs some kind of other core where it's just like these are core values, everybody lives by them, um, but they somehow need to circumvent like your cultural dynamics and stuff like that. But
yeah. I don't
I
want to
think
get
the
into like
dynamic
the
we
cultural assimilation topic. It's kind
mhm.
of different. I don't necessarily agree with it. If you can hash it out if you want, but I kind of want to.
Well, my issue with this though
I
is
didn't mean to
like,
shut it down. Sorry, I was just
You're
because
fine.
we got Ethan and Chrissy over here asking questions, and I want to get to them before we, I guess, kind of do a hard skirt into like
yeah,
assimilation and
yeah.
cultural melting pot stuff.
My thing
Okay.
with this is
I don't
money
want to talk
though.
about it, but okay.
Like
Oh, if
with
you want to
affirmative
talk,
action, it's money though.
we can talk about it, but let me first, I guess, address their questions, and
Go
then let's
for it.
dive into it. Is that fair?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so let's get the question. So Ethan said, legacy students isn't a way to deny POC. It is a way to bring money into the schools via alumni donations. I mean, that's true, but I still think it's a problem because we pride ourselves in being, like Doc said, this meritocracy. How can we pride ourselves in being a meritocracy when we're just, rubber stamping these rich kids into schools because schools want, alumni donations? I mean, it's up to schools. They can do that. I'm not saying they can't do that, but I understand it's a little bit, I guess you could say, unfair. It's just it's hypocritical because, like I said, we pride ourselves in being a meritocracy, but then you got these rich kids getting rubber stamped into high end schools because they're legacies.
Well,
That's my
that's kind of what I was saying about money, because the whole idea for affirmative action in my mind was that it stopped the other end of the spectrum, where like the super rich are the only one that get in there because they can either buy their way in, or from the get go they have the resources to just even for them, like if they're coasting, they have the resources to have a private tutor, to get them into school, and it's much easier than the guy who's like struggling, just getting a book. It's just so he can even try. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's different. That's resource. And I mean, you could argue it's a disparity there, like, but I just think it's, you could have a rich kid who literally just like didn't really put in the work. He's got like an average GPA of like maybe a 3.0 or even a 2.9. Got average SAT scores, which is like what, like 12 or 1300, and he still gets into like an Ivy League school. That's wild, just because of the legacy. I'm not sure like how prominent that is or not, but the fact that stuff like that happens like is an issue, and it's an hypocrisy that you can point out. Like that's like we're a meritocracy. We pride ourselves on being a meritocracy. That's not it. Miss Christie said, "Do you think there would be any significant change to college admissions because of this?" Yes, of course.
Yeah,
100%.
I do think so. But I do wonder if it's gonna go up to like to the recruiter, or like the person that's bringing them in. Like, what if they're a certain race and they're like, "Well, I'm gonna let all these people in," because now affirmative action
Ethan.
doesn't
I
stop
think
them
I think that's a
from.
little too. I don't know if the word be extreme of a take, or maybe because that's assumes a level of racism. Like I'm going to
What? Sorry.
accept
Can you
only.
repeat, Doc? Can you repeat what you said? I apologize. I was reading the chat.
Well, I was just saying, like, well, there's to me now a possibility of an individual who's a recruiter or something like that, just saying they're gonna get like whatever demographic they want into the school. Because at that point, affirmative action no longer stops them by capping them for a certain percentage. Now they can kind of just flood the school with whatever they want.
But that's still
Gotcha.
illegal because you're still admitting people based off race. It's still discrimination. I think, and this may be too much of a, I don't know if it's a center take or a vanilla take, which is just you'll just see the numbers balance out to the population of the country. I think whites make up like what 70% or something like that, around there, 60% of America. Blacks make up around 15, and Asians make up a certain percentage. I think you're going to see a fluctuation of those numbers come to the percent we hold into the America, or the population in America, and then on top, then you're going to have to factor in what each individual race tends to prioritize, and that's why you're going to see Indians and Asians be a little higher because they highly, like, to a degree, whether it's a parents force their kids or a genuine interest, you don't know, but they tend to prioritize college education, becoming doctors, blah blah blah. Whereas the from whites, so you can say blacks, they prioritize sports, NBA, football. Like the 80% of professional athletes are African American. Like it's just what you prioritize is just different. And I think that's where you're gonna see the stats shift a little bit.
I disagree with both of you guys like in a little bit way, but I agree with both of you guys. Um, I do think there'll be a shift, but I don't think that the recruiters will prioritize race. Well, if they do, the only reason I see them prioritizing race is A, they're racist, which we don't have to discuss that. But
Yeah.
B is that because of the affirmative action being taken off, an overcompensation or an unconscious overcompensation of not allowing. So that's why I said I don't agree to Gene's point where uh, it'll go to the
Population percentage or whatever.
population mean or whatever. I believe it's going to be a large fluctuation until there's a balance found. So I feel like there will be an overcompensation of not letting minorities in because you don't want to be seen as affirmative action. So I feel like they created an environment of nervousness for the recruiters or the admittance or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
going
Yeah,
to be
yeah, yeah. I
a
understand.
learning curve. Um, to
Because
the
they don't want to appear
diversity,
racist.
exactly. So then, like, you see what I'm saying? So I just think it's going to fluctuate. I do agree with Ethan saying that
Growing pain.
that means our achievements and success as people of color. I do. Um, as long as it's a fair playing field, then that's exactly what it does. Um, to the thing of the about diversity, if we're still going to go there, um, I don't believe that America. So I believe the actual thing. Well, this is my uh, conspiracy theory. I believe that America actually sells capitalism, but isn't capitalist. So I believe we sell the idea of capitalism, and so we get people to invest in the economy, build businesses, fail, buy houses, fail, da da da, do this, contribute in a way to you can reach this goal of working hard, and you can reach this life or whatever it is. But behind closed doors, it's not a meritocracy. It's actually not a large percent, a percentage of people limiting what the other percentage of people can do. And I'm not talking about race or anything like that. I'm just talking about money wise on a scale of that. So I believe we say that we want to assimilate, but what is the what picture if you were a salesman selling not nationalism, assimilation, what would you tell
Well,
the
they kind of
person
have
they
to
were
go hand in
assimilating
hand because
to?
then what are they assimilating to?
It would be a part of it, yeah, but I'm saying other than nationalism. So what else would you say, like, how would you describe a person who was assimilated into America?
It would have to be some context of nationalism because otherwise, like I don't know how else to explain it honestly.
But
Like you
about
have to like
what?
like
Because even
patriotism,
nationalism comes from somewhere. I'm not
pride in
saying this, I'm not being like
yeah.
negative. I'm going somewhere with it. But
I
you
guess
get what
like
I'm saying?
pride, appreciation for your country where you're born in. Like
So what is America
the
about?
history.
Well, for me, the way I would kind of surmise that is freedom. Like if you can sell people on the idea of freedom, which is the same thing we always harp on, then you can usually get people to buy in.
The
Um,
land of the free and the proud.
I mean, that's why most people come here, right? Because they're wherever they are, they hate it, and we tell them, hey, over here, if you just got the willpower, you can
Opportunity.
do it. You're like you're free to do it. So
It's
that's
the
what I
Okay.
would
freedom
try to
and
sell
also
them.
So
opportunity. There's more
Yeah.
that's why
opportunity
I
here.
said so that to my point, that's why I said America sells capitalism. So we're all capitalists on this level of things. You know what I'm saying? We're all participating. We're all fighting for the same spots. We're all doing this and that, whatever, right? If people don't believe that they actually have a chance, then America actually doesn't have anything to sell. So I say that to say, like, we want to assimilate into something, but we almost are all fighting for that identity. And America didn't really have they had an identity, which was the white picket fence and the house and the da 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 da. But because we're capitalists, we're looking at the 1%. We're looking at the people who are doing all these nice things and living these lavish lifestyles as that's what we want to obtain now. So now just the picket fence and the house or whatever isn't enough. That's not the dream. And because we are capitalists, the dream will always be changing because we always have to find a new product to sell you to become national, become a nationalist,
Or
become proud
dream
to be
to
an American.
achieve or a new
So even
dream.
after we sold you the picket fence, once you got in the picket fence in the house, we came to your door and we said, "Yeah, but
What about the
there's
Bentley?
Lamborghinis and D
Our
cups and there's a whole nother life to live. Now you don't want the picket fence. So that's our it's our problem we created, but it's also like the blessing of like being American. Like there's always something to to strive for,
Strive.
if you will.
Yeah.
So, but that's why I don't feel like our identity can be set in stone. So it's hard for us to find something to assimilate to. Because now what is it? It's
Well,
OnlyFans girls and Lamborghinis in Miami. Like, is that you get what I'm saying? That's the
I,
most, if we're speaking about what's prevalent in
I
our
think that's
society.
pop culture. I think you're focusing too much on pop culture. I don't necessarily disagree with you about the picket fence thing, and then like we have our ideals are kind of like out of wonk when it comes to what we want to assimilate towards. But I think you're focusing too much on pop culture, because
I'm focusing on what people, when people wake up, what they dream about, the lifestyle of living in
I,
majority.
yeah,
And
I
I'm
agree
not
with you to
talking
a
about,
degree.
I,
But
I was
but when I
being
think of
extreme
this,
with the OnlyFans
I get you,
girl,
I get you, I
but
get you.
you know what I'm saying? A life of leisure, a life of not working. And so like a life you, so it's just, now that that's the thing you want, it's hard to, we making people who don't want to work.
And
There's
also
no,
too, when I talk about assimilation, what I am specifically talking about is you have pockets of Africans, pockets
hmm
of Mexicans, pockets of Japanese and Chinese. Like they're not Americans. They're still like representing their culture from where they left. They still
correct,
wave in the Mexican flag. You go to the valley and you got people waving the
correct.
Mexican flag. It's like, what are you doing in America? Go back to Mexico. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, if you're in America and you came to America for a reason,
But
then
that's
you
what
shouldn't wave
America
another flag.
sold. That's what I'm
Agreed.
saying.
I,
That's
I
what
no,
America sold.
I agree with
That's
you.
the
But
product.
that's what we
So
need to
once they,
address, and I understand like how do we address that? That's literally the conversation. It's
correct.
just I just think that's I guess I'm more poking at the problem, and I guess agree with you, or I don't know how to answer you because I generally don't know a solution because we're just so divided right now. Like we literally have so many different pockets of everyone thinking like the purpose of coming to America is being able to have my culture I fled from and still be here in America. No, no. You have to
This,
to a degree abandon that culture and assimilate to this culture. And the question is, what is this culture? And I don't have an answer for
boom,
you, honestly.
boom. And this is America in retrospect too. So this is America after seeing that we cannot, and I'm not even saying we even did it properly, but this is America after seeing we cannot just have everybody waving their different flags and all that stuff. Like this is us with an opinion after feeling uncomfortable seeing those types of things. And I'm not saying us as a podcast, but just society in general. But you didn't know that until you tried. So when America was thought of, or when it was coming up, we said, okay, cool. Everybody come here, wave your flag. You can still be y'all, but we'll respect that. But on top of that flag is this flag. You feel what I'm saying? That's
Yes,
just not how.
we're doing. Yeah,
I think
I
it's
think
a
Ethan.
well,
Real
I
quick,
think it's
Doc.
a
Let me address
ripple of
Ethan's
oh, go
comment.
for it. Yeah.
Let me address Ethan's comment. Sorry, Doc. I think he had a good point, which was we have ceased to be a melting pot and instead are a nation of individual cultural identities. And I think that is true and a problem. Go on, Doc. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do agree with that sentiment. Because I've always felt like the country's kind of become this place where other people come to work, and you know what I mean. And it's just like this is your place of work, as opposed to like this is your new nation. Um, but I honestly kind of think it's a ripple of nihilistic intellectualism. Like the smarter we got, the more we started reviewing history, the more plot holes and the more things we found, and the more things that like we got to the point, and it kind of permeated out into like everyday, like Joe's and everybody. And it got to this point where like it's not cool to be American anymore. Like I've heard people be like, "Nah, man, you know what they did, man? I'm not a part of that. Hell no, I'm Cubano. I came from here. I'm
I don't
here, make my
identify as
money.
that.
Yeah." And they're like, "But I'm not. All those problems, all those sins that they created, like they're not part of my culture." And so you're kind of in this like zone where you're safe to identify with your home culture because nobody here's gonna question your home culture and like know the history of your home culture. But and here you can also kind of shield yourself away from the sins of this nation's identity when every nation really has its own sins. And so
Every nation has its own sins.
yeah, it's a very weird setting, and I do kind of like not I do really not like that. I even though like I know my heritage and descent is Mexican and I try to incorporate it like within my culture and stuff like that, at the same time like I have family members that are veterans, and so when I think about it I'm like I also, there's a level of patriotism too that you have to acknowledge, and I think you also have to kind of like think forward because it's like you said, like I mean, a lot of people who come here, they don't want to go back. At least I don't think they would. You know what I mean? Like some people left because they needed to, and some people are refugees, and that I do feel bad for. But for the most part, like if you really, really actually believe in whatever you came here for, then at that point you should start kind of pushing with it. But I think that a lot of people that are born Americans don't want to take the sins in, and so they identify as whatever their grandfather's generation
Unicorn.
was. Yeah.
But uh, America was never a melting pot, though. It never was. No,
Explain.
Gene.
Explain.
No. What it
What do you mean
was
by
a
that?
place where you came to work, not work. It's always been just a place where you come to work, to be honest with you. You know what it was? The people at the bottom just didn't know they was at the bottom. And eventually, the people at the bottom started figuring out they was at the bottom and got tired of being at the bottom. And now nobody has enough. Everybody's too proud. Everybody's too egotistical to just be at the bottom and accept it. If they're at the bottom, they have to blame somebody at the top. If they're at the top, they have to do what they got to do to stay at the top. It has never been a melting pot of just uh
Why can't both be true?
equal
Like I don't.
opportunity, da da
Why
da da
can't both be
da.
true?
And so when America presented itself as that perfect, we cannot say America did not present itself as a picture perfect fantasy land of freedom and opportunity and all this type of stuff. So I think the distaste comes from uh, and this isn't me saying America's sins was worse than any other place. This distaste comes from almost like a fallen hero, if you will. Because when you believe in any type of propaganda or anything, you see America, land of the free, the home of the brave, look at the people, look at rock and roll, look at this and that. You're seeing all these things. You're not thinking there's any negative, realistic negative that comes to it. So when you get the nuances behind the country, it's just like every other country. We're just better than everywhere else because we're the best. That's just it. So there's, I mean, you could say that it was a melting pot, but there was always somebody at the bottom, and what was holding them at the bottom was always systemic, regardless of what it was. So it's not a melting pot if you're, it's not a melting pot, it's a shepherd's pie.
I feel like you're talking about like different classes. Like I don't agree with anything you're saying, but it doesn't sound like an argument against America not being a melting pot. It just sounds like what you're trying to address is the disparity in like the lower class, middle class, and upper class. But that
Oh,
doesn't
I don't
dispute
care
that
about the
America's a melting
disparity.
pot.
What
Because
I'm
I'm not
saying
sure what
is
you're
that
trying to
you're
say.
talking
I don't
about a
really see what your
melting
argument
pot
is
of
in.
cultures, but until recently, your culture played a big role. Not recently, like, but until the 1960s, if you will, your culture played a big role in where you landed and what you were able to do in the
Your economic
country.
socio
So
class,
it
okay?
could not be a melting pot if everything in the pot didn't have an opportunity to be as expressive, if you will, if you just want to put it on that way, as possible. So like we're now getting to see potentials of,
Where do you
and
think?
I'm talking about from the 1960s of what a melting pot could be. But before then, fuck just black people, whatever race, whatever. It just wasn't, the internet didn't exist. We didn't have access to information. People were kept out of the loop easier. Things were redacted. Information was hidden. So like as far as opportunity now, and I'm not talking about race again, I'm talking about access. It's never been a melting pot for real. You just came here and whatever role it is that you guys played, you just ended up playing it. Yes, there was one-offs, but those were the disparities. So I'm not saying it negatively. I'm just saying we literally portrayed it as a melting pot that come
That's
here will accept your
that's
culture, da 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 da.
fair. I
But
mean, I think that's fair. Like that, there's some truth into what you're saying. Like you could say that we advertise ourselves as this country that's a melting pot where all these cultures or cultural backgrounds come here, but once you get here you realize there's some people with a boot and they're doing their best to keep certain people down. There's some truth in that, but I guess my rebuttal would be, do you think that's still true today?
no, that's why I said 1960s now, and that's why I said we now have the opportunity to see what a melting pot or the beginning of what a melting pot could be. But
So
the
when did we
things,
start
other
becoming a
things,
true melting pot then? Do you think
boom.
recently
But
or
we
like when,
can't.
like the 90s or earlier?
Maybe, I don't know. Rodney King got beat in the '90s, so I wouldn't say the '90s, but you get what I'm saying though. Like in earnest, but we've had so much time to do it and not do it that the potential of what we could have been, we didn't get to, and now it's almost like certain things in the pot have been in the pot too long, if you want to continue with the metaphor. So now we just not almost getting it's almost like there's always something affecting the potential of what we could be, whether it be racism or classism, and then it be wokeism or anti-nationalism. It just seems like there's always something, almost like it's a concerted effort, but something stopping us from actually like engaging truly. You don't agree with that?
No, I agree with that. I have a finger I could point. My biased, opinion. I
Who's ever Whoever doing cocaine in the White House, that's whose
was
fault.
about to say that's a good little transition.
that's that's who I
Quick,
blame.
before we do a quick turn to the next topic. Any last takes on this one, real quick, from melting pot, cultural diversity, and like assimilation, and the affirmative action.
Well, I do think it was a melting pot, but I think it was a very aggressive melting pot because you have cultures fleeing wars, you have cultures sometimes just trying to get to what they need to, and like they're trying to force their way in and stuff like that. I do think at every stage, like John said, like there's been barricades and like obstacles where the people that are in the country treat the melting pot like it's already overflowing, and people are trying to come in and it's still flowing. But at that point, it's just cycling, man. And so, and I think that's still true. I mean, I've watched movies where they show like the Irish, like migration and stuff like that, like Gangs of New York, and that they're just kind of forcing them into the country, or they're forcing them to go into the Civil War and they do battles and stuff like that. And even now with like the Latin immigrations that are coming, or Latin migrations, that's the right word. Um, I do think it's a melting pot, but I don't think it's like a hey, come on in everybody. I think it's just like people just slamming it from all angles, and
If it's a
it
melting
just
pot,
keeps
the stove
happening.
ain't on. Everything just in the pot. The
Yeah.
stove ain't never get turned on.
I guess it's the kind of the hard part to take into it though, right? Like the optimism of like those few people that were able to come here from somewhere, like fucking Elon Musk, who came from South Africa and all of a sudden is now Elon Musk. You know what I mean? Like they're far and
Facts.
few in between, and there's other people. I do think though, like me as an optimist, that there's small stories, like people who came over here and just even just got a house and were like, okay, this is it. Like this is where I stop, and I'm happy, as opposed
Correct.
to becoming Elon or something like that. And I don't know. I try to lean more on those than anything.
So I had one thing come to mind that I feel like that we needed to address in this affirmative action discussion, and probably change topics, which was, to what degree do you think the student debt plays a factor in this? Because we heavily incentivize, and we incentivize and promote.
Ethan, I'm
Yeah, I
listening.
know. Yeah, I'm address his comments after this, before we change topics. The last thing we're gonna do is address his comments. But at what point do we acknowledge that student debt, affirmative student debt, might be the cause or a cause of affirmative action? Because you have people who probably should not have gone. I'm not talking about black people. I mean, like a lot of people. Like honestly, I'd even say I probably shouldn't have gone to college. Like should not have gone to college, instead of should have chose a different route. But because we've sold, in my opinion, the lie of college education, and I guess wealth from the college education, we now have a large swath of youth who are in deep, deep college debt. And that debt greatly benefits the government, because that specific debt does not go away when you die. Or not when you, well, it doesn't go away when you die, but you also can't, it doesn't go away when you claim bankruptcy.
Yeah,
Like that debt is with you.
yeah.
So at what point do we try to, me being, this is conspiracy gene coming out. Let me preface this:
Yeah,
conspiracy gene coming out.
Can you connect the two for me, please?
We want more people in college.
Okay.
So if there's disparity in a certain minority group going to college, and it could be either they don't get access or they don't have money, well then
Hmm.
affirmative action. They're now getting access because of their color, and they're getting special funding federal whatever the term is that you got when you went to college. Now you're getting that funding.
Okay.
So it's feeding into the government in
Correct. Okay.
my
Okay. Okay.
opinion.
It's hard
And
to say too, man, because like if they ever come out, the government's like, hey, if you haven't paid your 40 grand or whatever, we're putting you in debtor's prison, like they did back in the old days. I'm like, oh, we're fucked. Like we're all going into the fucking camps, and I think it was a side effect issue though, because the idea was to give financial aid to people that
financial aid, that's the term. Thank you,
yeah
Doc.
that needed the help so that they could go off and become something. Um, but you have a lot of people who are free thinking and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna take this financial aid and I'm gonna learn how to paint. And it's just like, yes, like you should be yourself, but painting's not gonna pay off that debt unless you're just like, it's like going to Hollywood to become an actor. Like unless you're that one,
So why would a
chance.
school like Harvard offer painting?
I mean, I'm pretty sure they have an arts
I'm
program.
not
Maybe
I'm
somebody
not
went
specifically
into
talking about
that.
Harvard. Like they went against Harvard, but there are schools
Yeah,
that aren't Harvard that accept affirmative action and
No, no.
financial aid.
Any school on any level that's why wouldn't painting like? Okay, I'm saying it shouldn't be a. I agree
You,
with you completely. What I'm saying, but there shouldn't be that curriculum at the school, any university.
I
It
what I completely agree with you, but as a school, why not? If kids have free money
no, that's what
and
I'm
they have a
saying. Yes.
desire to do this with that money, I will create a degree for it so they have the motivation to come to my school.
then the
It's
financial
all
aid should
crony.
only then the financial aid should only apply to certain curriculum,
I
well,
in my
honestly
opinion.
probably I probably got to dive into that more, but on first reaction, I honestly disagree with that. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people think that
So you did it here. I'm
that you should only
just
go, and a lot of people also counsel that you should probably only go for degrees that'll be able to be paid off. Um, it's weird though, because like you need the humanities, like like you have to have people that learn this stuff just so that you can have a stable society. Should you have 80% of your population do it? No, that's not that smart. Uh, it's a weird, careful balance, but like to some extent, like I remember my professor. So I have a humanities degree, and I remember my professor literally telling me like, "Hey, like you're doing this for your soul. You're not doing this because you're gonna get rich." He's like, "So if you're okay with that, like just know you'll be rich, you know, wealthy in your soul, and you'll be fine." But if you're hoping to get to become, a famous writer, like the next J.K. Rowling, like he's like probably not going to struggle. So you kind of have to change your mindset, and then if you're paying off your debt for the rest of your fucking life, well then you just deal with it.
And kids aren't told that. I know it's probably a weird tangent to go on, but kids aren't told that, and that's why I tie in the student debt with affirmative action because affirmative action allowed not just like minorities, like some like for example, I don't know how prominent this is, but you got the Elizabeth Warren effect, which you got kids who are like 10% African American or 10% Indian or whatever, and then they lie on their application and say, I'm black, I'm an Indian, and then they get into school based on affirmative action. And how prominent that is, I don't know. They're able to do stuff like that to go to school, and like they probably shouldn't have gone to school. Like now you got debt when you shouldn't even be having this debt. You should have started a business. You should have gone to a trade school, or you should have just like done something else. And that's why I kind of on the side. I don't think I ever answered the first question that started this. So that's why I think this is a good thing because I think it's a hard reset on people's, I don't know if it's values, but at least paths when it comes to the future. Like, should you actually be going to college? In my conservative biased opinion, I don't think college is the answer anymore. I think college is a waste of money and a waste of time. Most education, honestly, can be self-taught. You can go to an online class. You can probably go to YouTube. You can probably go to get some mentorships or internships. Like you generally don't need college anymore for certain things. Humanities specifically, you don't need college. But if you want to be a doctor or a scientist, engineer, obviously you need college. But you, in my opinion, and I could be wrong here, my humble opinion, for anything humanities related, you don't need college.
I disagree with that, specifically because like there's something to learning something like that from an elder, from a guy that has written, a guy who has experienced the shaming of writing a poor book, and like, what I mean, you can definitely look that up on the YouTube if you really have the inclination for it. But
I
like
agree.
actually
I
talking
just
to
don't
a
think it has to
person
be
that
at the
has experience like
universities.
that.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be at the university. Save your money.
No, man, because like being in that setting, like you meet people, you network, and you actually have like the possibility of actually making money through the humanities.
Well,
Whereas,
anywhere writers are going to be is where writers are going to be. It does not have to be a university. There will always be the avenue of learning it from professionals. I just don't believe that it should all be covered under the same guise of university. But then again, what's to say any profession is more important than the other? So I guess that's where I'm wrong. But I want to address Ethan.
Yeah, let's finally
he
address
said
Ethan and move on.
he said, adding melting pot to my growing list of things to talk about the next time I get to speak with you guys.
You
Melting pot
got
does not
talk
you
mean
about
got a
the window.
everyone.
list.
Talk about the screen. Talk about him throwing out the monitor again.
It,
He's got post-it notes he
melt,
just stacks on the wall. He's just like, I got him.
melting pots does not mean everyone comes here and is automatically financially well off. It is a melting pot that allows opportunity to make your life what you want it to be. You need to understand the meaning of melting pot, and it has nothing to do with success and rather the incorporation of things from other cultures to strengthen our country. I do agree
Yeah, I think
with
there's some
you.
truth to
I
that.
was
Yeah.
never talking about just coming here and being instantly financially stable. I was talking about the role you played in getting to what you wanted to get to. The opportunity is what you're speaking of. And I'm saying up until the 60s, there was no real effort to make that opportunity actually equal for everybody. And so I said our potential was hindered by actual Jim Crow and all that bullshit when if we actually at inception were an actual melting pot as opposed to the attempts we're making now, which we're overcompensating with the LGBT community and Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, then we would see where we actually would be. I wasn't saying financially you're just supposed to come here and get a check and everybody be financially equal. I was saying the opportunity to be what you wanted to be.
It was a
Still
stipend to
thinks
a
I'm wrong.
degree. You're wrong. I have an FDT murder wall with the intersecting strings.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was thinking that also with the yarn. He's like
That's funny.
solving a cold case over there.
It's like Doc made this point, Gene made this point, John made
Yeah.
these points, the ties of this, to this. When I finally I'm gonna address every single one. I'm
Yeah.
gonna tie it all back.
I bet you I got the most strings.
That's funny. That's funny. All right, let's finally move on and get off this, and let's get to the fun conversation, which was cocaine in the White House. Some fun is going on. The Secret Service found cocaine at the White House, AP sources say. The White House was the White House was briefly evacuated Sunday evening while President Joe Biden was at Camp David after the Secret Service discovered suspicious powder in a common area of the West Wing, and a preliminary test showed the substance was cocaine, two law enforcement officials said Tuesday. Secret Service agents were doing routine rounds on Sunday when they found the white powder in an area accessible to tour groups, not in any particular West Wing office, the officials said. The officials were not authorized to discuss an ongoing investigation and spoke to the Associated Press on conditions of anonymity. The complex was evacuated at about 8:45 p.m. Sunday as fire and emergency crews were brought in to do a rapid test which preliminarily identified cocaine. The White House reopened and the powder was sent for further testing. Biden and his family left for Camp David on Friday and returned to the White House on Tuesday. The Secret Service said in a statement the White House was closed as a precaution as emergency crews investigated, and that the District of Columbia Fire Department was called in to evaluate and determine that the substance was not hazardous. Quote, the item was sent for further
Yes, it was.
evaluation and an,
Yeah, right.
an investigation into the cause and manner of how it entered the White House is pending, Secret Service said. All right. So
Damn.
here's
Some intern
who do you
dropped
think
his
it
shit.
was?
Wait, no. Gene, Gene, Gene. Do you think that's Biden's cocaine?
I never no I don't not say Biden's cocaine. If anything,
No, I know. I'm asking.
no Hunter Biden specifically. If I'm gonna say anyone specific, I'm gonna say Hunter Biden.
It's the boys.
Boys,
Yeah.
it's the sun. It's
Yeah.
the sun.
He's
So
probably
I
like,
can
God damn
tell
it, I
you,
fucking hate Camp David, and now I gotta go,
I
fucking
can
asshole.
tell you for a
But
fact.
before you say anything, John. But first thing, I have to acknowledge this. Obviously, coming from my crazy conspiracy mind, that I'm pretty sure everybody in the White House does cocaine. the press secretary. I'm pretty sure the staffers, the reporters. I'm pretty sure everyone's over there snorting stuff to have the energy they have. But because it's fun, I'm gonna point the finger at Hunter Biden. All right, go on,
Okay.
John.
So I can tell you two things for sure, right? One, whoever's cocaine it was knows it's their cocaine. And
Yeah.
They're sitting there laughing right now.
laughing. Oh my God, they are sweating. You know what? They
Nah.
probably went and got more cocaine. They were so nervous. Two, I can tell you how that person's day started. They woke up in the morning, they say, I'm gonna do white in the White House. And that they had to have immediately thought, I'm gonna do cocaine in the White House. It's gonna be a thing. I'm gonna because it has to be like Snoop Dogg smoked weed in the White House restroom.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Didn't he post about it?
The if I got invited to the White House, the first thing I'm thinking about is how I can get away with smoking a backwoods somewhere in that White House. That's the first thing I'm thinking about. So whoever this was, hey man, I hope you got to do something before you dropped your bag. Also, what a waste, I guess, if you like cocaine.
I like how they sent it off for testing.
Come on, man. They send it off for testing. It arrives at the lab. There's a guy in there like, it's cocaine.
I just think it's easy to point fingers at Hunter Biden because obviously everything's being released, the laptop, and then obviously him having a crack drug addiction problem. And I'm trying to find the video now,
Glad to see
but
he upgraded his drug of choice.
is it an up? Is from cocaine to from
I get
heroin to
it's
cocaine an upgrade
All I
Wait, he
know
went
is
from heroin?
Whitney said crack
or
is
crack? I'm
whack.
sorry, you're right.
I'm too
It's
rich
crack,
to do
crack to
that.
cocaine. Was it the
Yeah.
same thing? I generally don't know.
Dude, crack is like, isn't it like dollars for like a small or a large amount or something like that? Like it
I
is
have
like,
no idea. All I know is that's like I said. Whitney said crack is whack, and crack. I'm too rich to do that. So I ain't never heard nobody say I'm too rich to do cocaine. I'll tell you that much. So I'm gonna assume crackhead,
yeah,
cocaine head.
I always thought that was interesting that like Hunter Biden comes from his family, but he does crack, and I was like, why? Like, I figured you would have enough money to do coke,
He's a cheap whore.
because isn't
Crack whore. Is there a cocaine whore or is crack whore?
crack?
Crack has the worst suffixes that you can attach to it. Crack whore, crack head. It's just bad. There's no cocaine. Is there a cocaine whore? Maybe I don't know. I haven't been to Vegas.
But see, even cocaine whore sounds kind of classy. Like, I don't know, man.
Sounds kind of classy. This guy.
I don't know,
So does
dude.
anyone
I
else want to
can't.
take a jab at who they think it might be? No one thinks it's
I
Hunter. No
seriously
one
think it was
thinks
like
it's
an intern who
Biden.
just showed up and was
What
just like,
about Jill
yeah.
Biden?
I think it's the person who does the tour.
Oh yeah, like they got some ex like Van Halen roadie, and he's the one doing the presidential.
Sounds like a Netflix show. The White House staff, but like a comedy. Sounds like a Netflix show. So I'm sure it's the person who's doing the tour.
I mean,
That's the
maybe they're
talk.
running
Hey,
out of
welcome to.
ideas to keep Biden or Joe peppy, so now they're just like, fuck it, let's just give him cocaine and see what happens.
So who's okay? Let's run with that. Who's the White House cocaine dealer?
Damn.
I got the answer.
Dude, that's honestly that guy is making money.
It's the CIA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
They get
yeah.
the.
Oh, hold on, guys. I just got a knock at my door. I'm just-
We never see
What?
him again.
So okay, boom, I found it. Okay, so let me pull it up on Twitter. Let me copy this link. Let me send it to Ian on Discord. Ian, if you hear me, I'm putting this link into the Discord. Mute the audio because it's freaking loud. Like the bass is loud. So pull up that link and show it to everybody. Put it on the stream too.
Put it up on the board.
And while Ian's getting that set up, basically it's so this is a clip.
Congrats, Ethan.
This is a is it not popping up, Ian? Oh, he's doing that. Okay. So this is a clip from July 4th, and it is allegedly insinuating that Hunter was taking a hit, a bump, or whatever the term is, of cocaine, and this is what people are alleging, and this is fueling the narrative that the potential cocaine in the White House was Hunter Biden. So I want to show y'all this video and get y'all opinions on whether or not you think this is an overreaction and people are being a little bit too conspiratorial, like y'all reading too much into this, or was this, was this that motion we typically see of cocaine users?
I need to know the radius of blame Hunter Biden is like he's emitting where any cocaine within that vicinity has to be blamed on him. I need to know the radius because is it like 10 miles? So if there's some cocaine found at the gate at the White House, he's gonna be like, oh, like what's the radius? Because it just seems like everybody act like he the only nigga doing cocaine in the White House.
Is the only
I'm
easy
sure
one to
Hunter has done cocaine in the White House. How about
I'm
that?
sure more than just Hunter has done cocaine. I'm sure Obama has done cocaine in the White House.
You
I'm
said
sure
who now?
probably Trump has done cocaine in the White House.
You said what now?
Yeah,
I
I'd
said
still agree
Obama.
with that one.
You said what, John or Ian? I'm sorry.
I cannot support him talking about another black man like that. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm gonna say Obama did
Well,
cocaine
here.
in big ass nostrils.
You got the feed hidden, right? Just let me see what you're typing in, Ian. I'll tell you if it's right or wrong.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Joe Biden do got a lot of purple veins on his nose. Them shit's dead in there.
Yeah, that's correct. The password might be different, Ian. Let me
Joe
double
Biden
check real
knows.
quick.
Joe Biden knows got all the purple veins in it.
Yeah, maybe you should do the
Look
password
like,
stuff off the screen.
look like he been
Off the stream
snorting
screen.
jelly.
Yeah, the password's different, Ian. Let me send it to you in Discord.
Oh, I'm high. Oh my god, that was fantastic.
Okay.
Nigga snorting jelly is crazy.
All right, I sent it to you in Discord, Ian.
Oh man, fantastic. Oh, it's 10:02.
Yeah, let's finish up on this last reaction video and we'll call it. Now that you're logged in, you probably got to re-pull up the video because it probably needed you to log in first.
That King Charles one?
No. Did it not work? Let me see if... Here, let me do it one more time. It sent you to his page instead of the actual video. I don't know why it did that. Here, let me do it one more time.
Oh shit, is that him when he was younger?
Yes,
Damn.
it was. All right, try this one, Ian.
I've never seen that guy with black hair.
All right, here comes the clip. Yeah, mute it. It's loud. Mute it. You don't need the... It's loud. We don't... Yeah. Yeah, see? So, yeah, start over. Pay attention. So, the ledge right when he goes behind Jill is when he takes the quick bump. And then he wipes his nose. So, what do y'all think? I think it's a bit of a reach. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, it's a bit of a reach.
You could argue the only thing I guess you would question is what is he messing with in his hands before he goes to like play with his hair?
He's got the container cufflink.
I don't know. Yeah, the video's not on YouTube, Ian. Oh, it is? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, hard to say, man. That lady's in the way.
Because people are also saying Joe Biden looks noticeably perturbed for some reason, and I don't know if she is or not. I think there's a lot of assumptions going on, and it's just easy to point the finger at Hunter Biden because of everything that's going on. And like I said before, it's just funny and fun.
I'm gonna tell you right now, that boy ain't do no coke, but he did some coke recently. Now, do you think he really just can't control himself to where he'd have to do it in that moment, or do you think he'd do it right before?
Right before.
Or he's thinking about doing it right after? Or the nigga done snorted so much coke, his nose got itching. I don't know, but he ain't do no cocaine right there. If he did cocaine, there needs to be a sport for doing cocaine, and he would be the best in the world because that's the quickest, smoothest bump I've ever seen any human being ever be able to take. And if he's done crack before, I don't think he should be this athletic. Honestly speaking,
He's a pro,
he
man.
did the bump and cleaned his nose that quick, one motion, half
Yeah.
spin. This is the LeBron James of coke
There's a
doing
highlight
coke.
reel right now, but it's a breakdown right now.
That sleight of hand, bro.
That
It's
little
like
girl did not even get 4 jumps in. She got four on the shoulders before he turned, did the coke, and left. No, it's too good. It's too
it's
good.
David Copperfield and Hunter Biden, man. Best sleight of hands in the
It's
game.
it's David blamed the coke just now. Is that what you're
Yeah,
trying to tell
right.
me? Chris Angel the coke.
Right. Line free.
No, bro. That's wild. No, I don't think he did all that, my boy. But I do believe he had some in his system. I believe he would fail a test right there. I do believe he looks like a Baldwin, how greasy he comes off. Is Biden Italian? Because his son looks like real greasy and always tired and suit. Like you get a White House tailor and your suit just look like that is crazy. And he's always hot. Always hot. He's always sweating. His body's constantly going through withdrawals.
He's waiting for the next one. He has to like time it out
In between press releases.
in between press releases.
You know what? He
Or
giving some of that money that day. He giving some of that money back. That's all.
all
Giving
right,
some money back to the to where it can do the most help.
okay. All
The
right.
drug dealers and the crack holes.
Enough about cocaine and drugs. I think that's enough fake deep thinking for today. It was actually some fun conversation, specifically about the whole. I already forgot the freaking word.
Don't say it. You're gonna trigger Ethan.
I'm going to trigger Ethan. The
Don't say it. Tell him
affirmative
don't say it,
action.
Ethan.
Too bad I said it. Had a fun conversation about affirmative action, a melting pot.
My boy Ethan said the same thing.
uh, let's address the comments real quick because there's a lot, and then let's call it. So, Ethan's getting a new house, but we would never have gotten to where we are now. Oh no, I may be absent for a couple of weeks leading into the next month. Bought another house. This one is in Florida, and I'm moving at the end of the month. Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
Florida is a good choice. It's going to be hot just like it is in Texas. Good look forward to the 100-degree weather. How is it in Georgia, by the way, John? Does it hit the hundreds?
It's Hebrew heat.
It's Hebrew heat. Uh, thanks. My wife and I thought we could deal with being apart while she's in Pensacola Navy Flight School, but we quickly found out that we couldn't. So the video is not showing on YouTube. Yes, he is an addict with no guardrails or repercussions. Yeah, some truth. I don't think he did the coke there. I think he was already coked up by the time he got there. 100%. If not, Biden also with how drowsy he is. He needs a little bit of a pep in his step.
Y'all are gonna be so
Cocaine would
shook when another video comes
cocaine
out
would
from a different
kill
angle and he does it.
Biden. That's why I know y'all tripping. Cocaine. How many cocaine would kill him?
I don't know. I'm just trying to make a point that he needs a little something to get him going because that man is
I know. I'm just
struggling.
messing with you. A cocaine flake even floating near his nose, he's done for.
His heart couldn't
His
handle
heart
it.
got like 50 beats. Like you
Nice.
can count how many. Never. Let me shut up. I was saying you count how many heartbeats he got.
deep thinking. If you haven't
God
liked the
forgive
video
me.
already,
God forgive me.
please like the
God forgive me.
video.
God
If you
forgive me.
haven't
Don't take me.
shared the video, please
Oh
share
my
it so we
God,
can
don't
get
take
more
me.
people in this
I
discussion.
apologize.
We
Don't
need
take
more
me.
people with a murder wall intersecting strings just like Ethan. He needs some conspiratorial or conspirators with him. Also, leave a comment. Let us know how much you hate us, how much you like us, how much you disagree with us, how much you do agree with us. We'll see y'all next time on Fake Deep Thinking.
Would y'all be
Peace.
surprised if it was a little
Peace.
alien controlling Biden body like from Men in Black?
Yo,
Like it
thanks for
wasn't
making it to
really
the
like.
end. We really appreciate it.
I
And I
wouldn't
hope
be
you all
shocked.
enjoy the show.
I
Make
wouldn't
sure you hit
react
that
to it. I'd be
subscribe
like,
button,
that makes a
that
lot of
like
sense.
button, and the notification bell to get notified when we post our clips.
Follow us on Twitter at
This shit
Podcast
broke down.
Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok are all Fake Deep Thinking.